Welcome to the Vintage Ballers Podcast. I'm your host, Brad Carino, and on today's episode, we have Ryan Franziger joining the show. Ryan attended St. Ignatius High School, where he played both football and track before walking on and playing football at The Ohio State University. He then rejoined his alma mater as a teacher and assistant coach and has recently been named the head football coach of St. Ignatius football, replacing the legendary Chuck Kyle. So without further ado, please welcome Ryan Franziger. When I found out, and I got to give Mike Talty a shout out. He's the one that told me you're the new head coach a couple months ago. So when I found out from him, he's like, "You're not going to do who's the new head coach," and I'm like, "No way." So I was like, "I got to get him on the show." There's no doubt about that. And the fact that I haven't talked to you in God knows how long, so it was it's cool, man. Really cool to have you on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. And Ryan, I want to take it back. Let's take it back to your youth when I really met you back when you were a little kid at St. Bernadette's. When did did you always love football? Was that always your first love? And when did you fall in love with it?
Yeah, football was. Well, my dad was a high school coach. He coached for 35 years. He coached at Rhodes. That's where he went. Cleveland Rhodes. It's in Old Brooklyn. He was class of 68 there. And I mean, I remember even when I lived in our old house, I grew up in North Olmsted at first till I was about 4.
I didn't know that.
And I remember one day he was raking the leaves, and he had a tarp, and he had a tarp over the leaves, and he had bricks to secure the tarp over the leaves so the leaves didn't blow away and ruin all of his hard work, And I took the bricks and put them in the front yard for like a circle, for like a huddle. I thought we were going to have a football game. Okay. And that was going to be where we huddled, right around the bricks, So that was, I must have been 4. I remember he'd come home either from his game or, a game he was scouting. Coaches with huddle, with a video exchange online, coaches don't scout in person that much anymore. So yeah, I mean, I was little, and I really didn't know many other sports at that time besides just wrestling with my brother. But I always liked going to the games. He would, if they would play on Friday night, he would bring the bag of footballs home. So the next morning you get in his car, it smelled like the leather.
Oh yeah.
And then if he'd have a JV game the next day, or sometimes Rhodes played Saturday afternoons. So yeah, I just, if I wasn't exposed to it, I don't know how that would have impacted me, but I was. Like, I can't change the way my life turned out, I know my dad always loved football. Partly, maybe some of it's like I wanted to be like my dad, because he also coaches track. I do that too. I do the shot and disc. He was a head coach. Yeah, football is it's a special game. There's just certain things about it that I love. I don't know if that's what you wanted to get into, but
I do. And how long did your dad coach at Rhodes?
About 35 years.
No kidding. Wow.
So he was a teacher in Cleveland. He started at Martin Luther King on the east side, and then he had the opportunity to teach at Rhodes, but he was always a football coach at Rhodes.
Okay.
All that time. So he went to John Carroll after he went to Rhodes. So after he graduated John Carroll, he started coaching. So his last season was 2007. That was my first season.
No kidding.
With Ignatius. So that was, for me, that was right out of college. 2006 was my last year at Ohio State. So yeah, that's just a little bit of my history.
Well, it's interesting you bring up your dad and the influence he had on you, because my dad and my brother, as you know, my brother, of course, he was a star athlete at North Olmsted. And at that time, he was the all-time leading scorer. He still is at North Olmsted High School for basketball, and he was a leading scorer in the city of Cleveland. So I grew up kind of like you did, around sports all the time, not really knowing the impact it was having on me. I just grew up around it. So I thought, like, everyone does this. And, so connecting with guys like you at St. Bernadette's and Nate Zepp and Jason Garrick, and we'll go on with all those guys. There's tons of them, who are all big sports fans like I was. It was just a natural connection. And I remember actually playing a game. I talked to my brother about this because I told him you're going to be on the podcast. He remembers, they used to call you Little Barkley. And I remember like you playing in a basketball game with us. We were probably 10 years old, and that was
I
when my
remember,
brother was in college. Yeah.
I remember that. That was one of the great days, of childhood.
Oh, it was awesome. I still remember to this day.
What at the fire department?
Fire department, exactly, right behind there.
Yeah,
It was
we
probably
played for hours, and
oh,
your brother and some of his friends.
yep, exactly. Some of his college buddies, and one of them was actually a minor league catcher who played. He almost played in the major leagues, and it was just a
I
great.
remember
And then it was a great game, and there was a lot of athletes in that game.
that was what was his name? Was it
Brett Miche, and then there was,
Jay? Yeah.
and then my brother, of course, and there was a ton of us. I mean, there was probably 12 of us and they were playing. It was 5-on-5 or whatever it was, and I mean, it was just it was an awesome day. And he mentioned that.
It was it's funny how you say you were just exposed to it, you don't know. I remember there were times at recess there'd be some violation of the rules in football, and I'd call it out, and I'm like, how do you guys not know that this is a rule? And it got to the point where some of the guys were like, are you making this stuff up? It's probably Talty.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, yeah, I guarantee it was Talty.
Ryan, you're probably making up these rules now.
I remember Ryan, I remember so many of those recess games we used to have, and 4-on-4, 5-on-5, and just going back and forth. And again, the amount of talent in those games, looking back now, especially with you and Nate and Kilbane and all these different people, was astounding. And
yeah. Owen Evans too.
Owen Evans. I mean, yeah, Jason Garrick. You had Conley, the late Tom Coster. You had just tons of people that would play in those games. And I look back now, and it kind of defined part of my childhood. And I didn't realize how much that really did define until I got older. I look back at it. I'm like, wow, I would do anything to go back to just one recess and play another game. I really would.
No question. And the pickup games, pickup and youth sports is disappearing. And there was a real fine article. I don't know who wrote it or when it was, but everything is so organized now that we're losing some of those things like enforcing your own rules, fair play, a lot of these things that you really grew up learning on the playground. Those moments are gone because everything is so organized now, which is good and bad. I think it's probably too organized and too early, and there's too much travel, and we're just at a point in youth sports where that's what's going on. It's a bit of an industry, there's no doubt about that. I'm glad that what I coach is still tied to a school, and it's tied to education. But those are really fine childhood, really moments, not just memories, but kind of formative things. And you compete, and you shake hands, and then you go back to class.
Yep, you're right. And I think looking now too is social media. I have 5 nephews, and they're on social media. I mean, all the time. That's all they did. We didn't have that back then. So we had video games, but it wasn't like we were playing Madden 24/7. So going outside was our main thing. If it was nice out or even generally nice out, we would be outside playing football, baseball, basketball, you name it.
And I don't know if it's generational. When we were growing up, my dad would say, even if we were playing a video game, you guys should be out, getting your buddies together and playing. It doesn't matter what,
I think it is generational.
The way that he would describe it, he and my Uncle Bob, they grew up in Old Brooklyn. They'd get on their bikes in the morning and they wouldn't come home till dinner time. And nobody cared to know where they were. It was just, they're out in the neighborhood, having a good time.
That's exactly how my dad grew up next to Jack Corrigan, who, obviously, very well from Ignatius, and the former, Cleveland Indians announcer and current Colorado Rockies announcer. And him and my dad have so many stories about growing up in a neighborhood where from sunrise to sundown, they'd be playing sports. That's what they were out and about doing, whatever, and then playing sports most of the day. And that's just what they did. And our generation, I feel, is kind of in the middle. Like we definitely had video games that were an influence, no doubt about it, but we weren't playing video games as much as the current generation. So, but to their, looking at the current generation, that's all they know. They grew up with nothing but social media in the last, 15 years. So they don't know any better. That's all they know. And it is what it is. But I agree. I don't see as many of that generation outside just playing pickup football. You just don't see that, or pickup basketball. That's just not their big thing now, is getting together and playing online, playing against each other on some game. So it's very different.
And the impact of all this, we won't really know for years. We'll see. I'm sure people will really analyze it and study it, but we don't know at this point.
Have you seen, Ryan, as far as football is concerned, anything either way as far as how social media has impacted it, good or bad? I mean, any kind of influence?
Um, it's hard to say exactly. It's probably always going to be in the context of school for me, just because I'm an administrator here. Um, it's funny. Coach Kyle coached a national team in '08. They used video games to their advantage. They plugged the playbooks into the I don't know if it was Madden or like a college football game. So kids learn some things through video games.
Interesting.
Yeah, like if they put up a cover three zone and you select, your defense is running that, they know like that it has the areas on the screen.
That's pretty cool.
So I'm not saying that I I use that for teaching. If I were on that national team, maybe I would, because they only had a short few weeks to learn the scheme, and they didn't know the coaches. I mean, it was a national team, so they had coaches from all over. Um, you know, what I do see is like when guys leave the field, they're looking around for people to take photographs, because it's not just the photograph; it's posting the photograph. It's not just for your memory; it's for social media too.
Yep.
But as far as the game, it's too hard to separate from probably just the way that kids are brought up. Um, there is less playground football. There's even less youth football. There's less contact at practice. There's even less contact in the game. The game is more spread out. So there aren't that many huge collisions down in the trenches. Um, but no, I don't know. I'd probably just be guessing if I said it, how it has really impacted the game, but it's just impacted people in general. Their attention span is lower.
Mhm.
Um, I don't know if it's narcissistic, but there's just this need for attention and approval and likes and stuff like that. Um, I'd have to really sit back and reflect on it, because I've been doing it for 15 years. So I'm sure there's been some of it gradually, being incorporated into just in our youth. But for me to sit here and say, I know this for sure, not really. So I don't
Yeah.
know. I don't know if that's good, or maybe if you asked another coach, they'd have a totally different answer. But you can see things at school for sure. And then it's hard to say because of the pandemic, um, how to really put all that in context, because you have the technology piece, then you have the shutdown and the pandemic piece. Um, it's an interesting time. I'll say that for sure.
It is. And we, as kids, we never had to go through anything even close to that pandemic. I mean, we had in high school, of course, we had 9/11, which was a huge tragedy, and Columbine, but that was kind of the start of all the craziness that would come in the next 20 years. So,
Yeah, yeah, right. I wonder too, how I would have reacted in high school if my senior spring sports were shut down, or we even the next fall we went into a 3-week shutdown during the fall.
wow.
That would have been tough, because our whole purpose was just trying to get to school. We didn't want to have, hundreds of cases. This is the fall of 2020, and then we made so many plans to be in person, to have in person learning. And then when the athletes got together, there started to be some cases. So we went into a 3-week shutdown. I just wonder all the time, how would my 18-year-old self handled that? I don't know. Probably not that well.
No, you're right. And that's the thing, is that we're looking at it from our adult eyes, but when you're in their shoes, especially if it's your senior year, and you're not getting to experience your friends and playing sports together, and in the shutdowns, I don't know how I would handle that either. And that's a huge, that's your senior year. That's one of the biggest years of your life, at least your young life. So,
What we're seeing now is, I coach the shot put and discus. Guys are just behind. They, like, the seniors missed their sophomore spring. Some of these things take years of technical work to really nail. Now everyone had that, so it's not like I'm saying we have a disadvantage, but just looking at the progress of guys, they're behind. They're a little bit behind.
Yeah, I mean, again, like looking back at that whole situation, right? And I'm glad you brought up the pandemic because it did. I would ask my nephews, and some of them they enjoy being at home at times, but then they would miss their friends. Who doesn't? Who no one wants to get up for school all the time, but at the
Right.
same time, like you're not at that age, you want to be around your buddies. That's what it's all about. So
Yeah.
again, just a very odd time, and even in my family, like we had, they were only allowed to hang out with very few people, like my nephews. They were close to that. They kind of we all kind of hung out together through that first 6 months or so. And it wasn't really a lot of seeing a ton of other people. So I had to be careful because my parents are older and, so it was just an odd time and it still is not 100% back to normal. It might never be, or at least for a while, but it's getting there, hopefully.
I think it is. Yeah, it is.
It's just, and I actually had COVID a few months ago, about 4 months ago. And, I mean, it was rough. I had it wasn't fun, but I was I hate to say I was kind of glad to get it just to get it over with for the next
Yeah.
6 months and not have to worry about it for a while.
Yeah, I think I'm a two-time survivor.
Are you?
Um, so I unfortunately had it at Christmas, so
I did too.
that
Yep.
was the bummer.
No family out. Yeah. I was the same way, right?
Christmas on New Year's.
Same here.
There was
Yep.
a lot of football on.
That's pretty much what I did. Yeah, I was the same way. I got it like the day before. I started feeling a little bit rough Christmas Eve, and then by Christmas night, I knew I had it. Got tested a couple of days later. I knew, but yeah, that was the first Christmas week that I'd spent alone my whole life. I've never had anything like that before.
The only thing when let's see, the 04 season, we had the Alamo Bowl. Was about December 28th, 27th. So we were all Christmas. We had Christmas at the Hilton in San Antonio. That was a little weird, but we had our teammates at least. But this time, now I will say, even though I was positive, I did go to Christmas Eve Mass at the cathedral. That's my parish, and I made sure nobody was around. But I wasn't going to miss that. So I made it.
Dedication right there. I'll tell you. I mean, right, I want to take it back again to St. Bernard's because
Yeah,
that's
sure.
such a big part of our, what happened. Or were you actually, like through those first, 5, 6 years that I knew you and up until you went to Ignatius, what did you learn at Bernadette's and from the, just from your friends and the teachers and everybody there that prepared you for Ignatius and beyond?
Well, it was just from an academic standpoint, it was just a solid education. I thought the teachers were good. They were dedicated. A lot of them had been there many years. That continuity is important. They were veterans. I thought some really solid teachers. That's probably the number one thing, whether it's grade school, high school. If you have solid teachers, and I don't just mean instructors, I mean, good people who set a good example, who really care about kids. Now, as a child, it's easy to say you don't like such and such teacher, but I thought they did really a darn good job.
They did.
It was a thriving school. We had about 60 to 65 kids a class, the whole class. It was a strong community. I thought there was a lot of good school spirit.
Mhm.
A lot of kids went on to Ignatius, Ed's, Mags, Joe's, wherever in Westlake, Avon Lake, and we're good athletes, good students. I think it was just a little bit before Westlake really took off in a huge way. I'm talking like Western Westlake. Now I don't know if a lot of those kids go to Bernadette's, but some of them do. That's where we made a lot of good friends. Yeah, just some solid guys. Unfortunately, 8th grade, I remember took the bus with Tom Coster and Bob Long. Just solid people. That's really what I think of St. Bernadette. The athletics were good. The academics were good. Spirituality was pretty strong. Just an overall solid experience. I mean, I don't know if you want to get into one of those areas more in depth, but
I mean, I think you talked about the community aspect. For me, that's what hit me, I think, as I went on. And Avon Lake has a really good community aspect too. But I was lucky to be in two great communities with St. Bees and then with Avon, all the Avon Lake community that I ended up knowing for years after that. So I didn't realize it. I was so young at St. Bede's when it was first grade when I transferred there from St. Brendan's. And then I was after fifth grade when I moved to Avon Lake. My mom had remarried and we moved there. So it was, it was so much of a transition period for me at that time, Ryan, that I didn't really fully get how great St. Bernardet's was until I was years later. And then I look back and reflected and I'm like, wow, I would love to just be back in a classroom and with you guys and hanging out and you making jokes and playing football at recess. And it was just a great, camaraderie with all the guys. And it was, and everybody there. And I really missed that aspect of it. You guys were a huge part of my life. To this day, I still have tons of memories from you guys. And, you kind of set me up, like sports wise, especially, Ryan. You guys, like you playing against you and all the guys we mentioned, like, I mean, no one, I wasn't really scared of anybody at that point because I played against some of the best of the best. So I'm like, well, really, that's how I felt about it.
Well, we had a really solid class. Even the guys older than us that
Peter Cook and all them. Yep.
Yeah, yeah. Now I got to know them better because my brother Tim is a year older than me, so I got to know those guys. It just seemed, even when we were there, it seemed like there was something. There was a pride. There was a pride in your school. A bit of a tradition aspect that we have a little responsibility to the people before us, and then it's in our hands and we have to set the people up behind us for success. I loved it, really. I mean, my parents still go there for church. They still live in the same house, so I'm there once in a while. They still have the big field in the back. I wish we had the gym that they have now.
What is it? I haven't been there in probably 10
it's
years.
A beautiful.
Is it?
Beautiful gym. Yeah, they actually may have finished it 20 years ago.
Really? Then I must have been, I thought I was there. Maybe I wasn't inside because I would definitely know. Where is the gym at exactly?
It's like behind the third grade classrooms.
Okay. Yep. Where there used to be a field, a little grassy area there.
There was a field. Yeah. So right along the driveway, if you're going back from Clegg back to the church.
Yeah. I haven't been in there then.
Along that driveway. And then it stops at the parking lot. So that whole field, there were like various fields.
Yep. Yeah.
Between the sidewalks. So that field is gone. I think they still have enough area.
No kidding. Yeah, I haven't been there, and I might have seen it from the outside, but I definitely haven't been inside because I would remember that. We had that small little gym in the front that we would play at, but you couldn't even have a game there because it was so small. You couldn't even have a crowd.
That was the original church.
Was it? Okay.
At least, it's funny. These communities start first, and they'll celebrate Mass like anywhere they can. So they probably had some masses just in the first building they had, but yeah, that was the first church, I think, until the 70s.
Okay.
And then they built the one kind of in that Irish cottage almost style.
Yep.
Yeah, and then that's probably when like one of the first waves of Westlake in the 70s, a lot of growth. And then I think it was pretty consistent. And then it started to really take off. But yeah, again, I loved Burnette's. But we didn't know anything different, so I don't know. But I don't think it's just that. I think it was a pretty strong community. Good teachers, good coaches, good families.
It was, and again, the teaching is another thing I didn't understand or really get back then because when you're younger, you just don't fully get it. You probably got it a little more because you have a dad that was a teacher, but now that I have a brother and his wife are both teachers, and I really get it now. Because they tell me everything, and I see them lead by example, and all the tutoring they do after school. My brother was a coach for many years, and so was Michelle, his wife. So I definitely understand that aspect for sure. And that is not an easy. I mean, just when you add coaching on top of teaching, that is a lot of work you're putting in, a ton.
Yeah, it's when I interact with young grade school kids now, I just say to myself, God bless their teachers who deal with them all day. And with 30 kids, I mean, it's amazing, really. It's a tremendous vocation that they're called to.
It is.
And it's so important too.
It really is.
Yeah.
And I have so much respect for teachers. I have more than a few in my life that I know pretty well. So, and of course, my brother being the main one that I really, seeing him he's been a teacher since 95. So 27 years. So, I mean, he's been doing it for quite a while. And of course, you know, it's just like you, he's always been tied with sports too. So he's always very connected to his community. And, you
Yeah.
know, I definitely have a lot of respect for anybody that does what you do. I mean, it is a very important vocation, and it's something that I think we need, you know, especially in this country. Like, I feel like we don't take teachers, we don't appreciate them as much as we should. So,
Yeah. Yeah. I think, you know, it gets a rap that you're going to be poor. I don't know if you're poor. You're not poor, but you know, you may not get the paycheck that you think you deserve, but um, people are called to it, and I think they answer that call. And when people don't answer that call, and you don't have quality people in your building, your education suffers. There's no doubt about it.
and Ryan, when you, so, you know, going from St. B's to, was Ignatius always on your radar as number one, or was there any other school you looked at?
No, I didn't think of anywhere else. My dad went to Rhodes. My uncle Bob was here in the '60s. Um, my dad actually applied. He got an 89 on the test, and he didn't get in.
Really?
Those were the baby boomers, so there were about 1,000 applicants for 300 seats.
Wow.
Yeah. He started taking me to games um, when I was little, so I was exposed to it, and he knew Chuck Kyle through John Carroll, and they were both track coaches, so they would see each other several times a year. Nick Restifo was our offensive coordinator. He played with my dad at John Carroll. So he knew who these guys were. And plus, they started making their playoff runs. And my dad, I'm sure just like your family, they're going to go to just good local games, no matter who it is.
Yep.
Now, it just happened to be Ignatius. So my dad was a fan. You know, his brother went here, and he just, I don't think he was like grooming me or anything like that, like to send me to Ignatius. It was just, hey, this team is good. We have a connection. And then they kept winning, so you'd have more games. You know, when it's the state semifinals, you only have a few. You're not going down to your local game. You got to pick the teams that are winning. So it was just, I was really fortunate to be exposed to all that. I don't even know at what age you start thinking, you know, I'm gonna go to high school one day, and then you got to make a decision, and then it was an easy decision for me, and I was lucky enough to get in. Not that we had to be brilliant or anything, but in some ways it was a motivator. You know, you better get good grades or you're not going to go to Ignatius. No, it just seemed like a great fit for me. You know, I loved kind of what Chico was doing, and he was a teacher first. Academics and spirituality always came first. And that, you know, it was kind of neat. I noticed he was at his alma mater, and my dad was at Rhodes, also his alma mater. So that concept was kind of being introduced to me. That was something I thought was pretty cool. And, you know, growing up, that's what you think. You say, oh, this is just the way it is, I guess. You know, you go to your alma mater and you coach. But yeah, it was I knew I wanted to go there definitely by sixth grade, you know, and I was a kind of a fan. You know, I was a fan going to those games. So I liked them. I liked Notre Dame.
Yep, I remember your Notre Dame jacket you used to wear.
Yeah, I loved Lou Holtz, man.
Yeah.
Actually, I was in fourth grade. I was Newt Rockney for a project for
Were you?
Who Am I project.
I love it. I remember that ND jacket for sure.
Wait, what jacket did you have?
It was a Miami Dolphins jacket. Like
Okay.
it was like the trendy thing back then. Everybody either had a Charlotte Hornets or a Miami Dolphins. I like that teal color for whatever reason. And then of course
Sure.
I got Browns after that. But
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that was like a Dan Marino. I don't know if it was Dan Marino and the Dolphins.
That's great that you remember.
Oh yeah, I remember that for sure.
Bettis. I loved Bettis.
Oh, Bettis he's a monster. What a monster he was.
Yeah.
Yeah, and especially back then, Notre Dame, Florida State, you know, Charlie Ward being there, and that was when we were like fourth, fifth grade. And it was funny. I had a Charlie Ward's teammate Chris Childs on the program who played with him on the Knicks, and you know, he was saying how great of an athlete Charlie. I mean, imagine playing in the NBA and being a star quarterback in college, and could have been a quarterback in the NFL. It was a heck of an athlete, but unbelievable. And that Notre Dame, I think it was 1-2. It was like Ohio State, Michigan when you were there. 1-2 in '93, and I can't remember. I think Florida State beat Notre Dame, beat you guys. But I remember watching it with my cousins, the Anuscos, who all went to Ignatius Notre Dame, and
What happened? Notre Dame won. It was at Notre Dame.
okay, Notre Dame won. You're right, and then
they lost to BC the next week.
that was it.
Florida State ended up with the national championship.
That was it. Yep, I knew there was something that people were like outraged about.
Notre Dame before that, the Miami Hurricanes, that was their rival. That was heated.
And that was back when the Jimmy Johnson days. With yep. Oh yeah, that was a.
Who was the other? Erickson. Erickson, I think, took over after.
Yeah, he did. Yep. Yeah, Dennis Erickson. Yep. Those are going. But those are the glory days of college football. I mean, those 80s, 90s, early, man, amazing back then. And you had, Coach Osborne. You had so many great coaches that are just iconic back in those days. And it's we'll definitely get into some college football in a second. Yeah. But I want to pick your brain about a couple of things. But so going to Ignatius, I have a lineage of people that I know, between family members, my cousins, the O'Malleys, Danny and Kevin O'Malley, Mark and Chris Anusco, who Tom Anusco, their dad, Jack Corrigan, Mike Petrus. There's a ton of people that I know that went to Ignatius. And it's just it's funny because I feel like I almost went there because I know so many people that went there. So when you going there and looking back, what are some of your favorite memories? Number one. And number two, I want to get into, Coach Kyle and what he taught you as a football player there.
Sure. Well, the memories to me, they're always really tied to the people. So you have your old buddies from grade school that, a number of us went from Burnett's to Ignatius. So we have those guys. And then you meet a bunch of new guys too, who become your friends. Really, freshman football is still a memorable thing for me. We had a really intense coach who was really tough, and he really, made you realize if you want to win, you have to work hard. You got to work hard than the other guy. He did a great job. His name was Matt Petrus. He went here. He was class of '82, played at Akron a little bit. And sports, going through tough things, like you can expose people to tough things in sports. Those are going to build the bonds. Okay. It's not so much your math class. It's going through the trenches with your buddies. That's how you really build friendships. We had a good class. We were successful. I was fortunate enough to be on the championship in '99, my sophomore year, and then my senior year. My brother was a teammate of mine for 2 years. So when I was a sophomore and a junior, he was on the team. Really establishing friendships, establishing relationships. Those are the best memories. I mean, yeah, there are certain games that stick out in track meets and things that stick out. But really just forming those relationships, that's the most important thing. And you grow up, high school, you come of age, you really become maybe a young adult. Men don't really mature till they're 30, I think. So
I agree.
You're really building a foundation. Again, just like Bernadette's, so many good teachers, so many good people in the classroom, so many good coaches that are setting that example and teaching you the game and teaching you how to win, teaching you, how to lose, how to bounce back. And then I loved it enough to want to come back. So it obviously, had a big influence on me and a place that I could see myself being happy. That's kind of the basics, if you want to get into specific memories. I mean,
what was it like playing for Coach Kyle? And what was his, what is his philosophy as a coach?
Well, I loved it. And he was a guy who I knew before, I had seen his teams. He always educated the whole person first. I think that's important. It wasn't just you're the fullback, you're the linebacker, you're the quarterback. You're a student, you're a student athlete, and you're a student first. So he's going to care about you in that way. He always had a lot of integrity in his program. There was never any question about, is he going to do the right thing and play by the rules? And if there's no question for him, then there's no question for you either. He always had a great staff of coaches. A lot of assistants stayed with him for years, for decades. There's a reason for that. He's always treated people well, treated them with respect, whether it was his players, the opponent's coaches. We wouldn't sit here on the field and dog the other team or dog the opponents. There was a ton of respect for everybody we played. He still does that. He still lives that way. Um, he's always been a big guy on playing the game with passion. There's a lot of emotion in the game. Um, yeah, and then he was my track coach too. He just loves competition. Sometimes I think he loves track more than football.
Really?
In some ways, yeah. Even if it's a 3,200-meter race, 2-mile race, you got some kid he might even be battling for fourth place. He's not even the best guy out there. He gets so intense about just that guy either setting a personal record or just competing with that guy who's in fifth, and maybe he's moving up to get third. Um, he's always believed in that healthy competition. But overall, he's always embraced hard work. You have to work hard. If you want something, you better work for it. If you don't work for it, you don't really want it. And embracing your challenges. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid of those challenges. Just accept it and then go after it. Go after it with everything you have. Those are kind of the things. And then have great faith in what you're doing. Those are kind of the big three things: the hard work, setting your goals and going after them, accepting your challenges, and then having great faith. To me, those are kind of the 1, 2, 3 of Chico in athletics.
Yeah, I mean, he really seemed he has so much respect from so many different people, even outside of Ignatius. There's a ton of people that respect him. I mean, obviously, he's one of the greatest coaches of all time. And you look at when looking over at that job. I mean, Ryan, the fact that you're taking over that job and the fact that you were the one that they saw as the the next man in charge, to me is a huge compliment to you, because you are taking over for a legend. But knowing you, and I've talked to several people on the outside who I know, I told them about you who went to Ignatius, and I said that Ryan's the best of the best. Like, I grew up with them. I mean, it was just,
Thanks.
I have no doubt, man. Like, really growing up with you and seeing you, knowing you when you were a kid too. That's a big thing, knowing someone as they grow up and seeing what they're really like when they're little, and you were always, it was always integrity. It was always hard work. That was always you. You were always a great athlete. We knew that, but you
Yeah.
also had that demeanor. You weren't going to, like, necessarily pick on somebody. You were always just, it was about, playing the right way, like you said, by the rules. And so when I heard you were the new coach, it didn't surprise me one bit. Like, it really didn't. I when Talty told me that, I almost started laughing. I'm like, that doesn't surprise me one bit, because I mean, that's just Ryan. It's almost like you were meant to do this.
Oh, thanks. Yeah. No, I'm really blessed to have this privilege of taking over. And people ask me all the time, are you nervous? Are you intimidated? And I said, well, let's think about this. Would you want to take over the position having known the guy who won or not? I'm glad that I learned from him. I'm glad that I know him. I'd rather learn from him than not, right? At least I have that, and I've worked with him for 15 years. So I feel good about that. It's not easy. I mean, it's not going to be it's not just like you show up and you win. I mean, a lot of people want to win.
Well,
Yeah, you bring up a good point. Are you are who you are, and you can form at different stages, but if you're a person of integrity, that's something in your soul.
it is. Especially at
So
that age, Ryan, when you're younger, because I was more of a little shyster when I was younger, and I've learned over the years what not to do, what to do. And of course, like, everyone matures at different ages, but I feel like back then you were way more mature, in my opinion, in certain areas than we were, just because, I mean, you could tell it was obvious, and no one really messed with you because first of all, you were big and strong. But number two, they knew that you were kind of the guy that you did things the right way. And we just kind of knew that. And it was something that
yeah,
wasn't even spoken.
yeah, I never really tried to bully people because of my size or anything. And we had such a good group of guys.
We did.
Um, we weren't going to put up with that. And I don't think we had groups of guys that picked on guys that bad. We kind of policed our group, pretty well. We're still young kids, we did some stupid things, and we
Sure.
were
And
kids,
you're going to, exactly, at that age. Yep.
um, but no, I thought we really policed it pretty well, and just had a good group. Yeah, just a really solid group of guys.
We did. No, we were very fortunate to have those guys, all of us together really at that age. And again, I know I talked about it earlier in the podcast, but just those formative years when you're, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, you don't realize how much your peers influence you in every aspect of life. And they really do. It's not just your parents. It's not, of course your parents have the biggest influence, but beyond them, it's your peers. That's who influence you.
Yeah. When you start getting into peer pressure and, things like that, it can go either way. It can go either way. And I think for us, we had such a good group of people. That was good.
It was good. And I think, again, growing up with my brother, he's a lot like you, where he was very talented and extremely modest. So I kind of saw it, and he was a hard worker. So I would see him playing basketball in the snow when I was, he was 17, I was probably 9 or 10. And I would look outside like, why is my brother shooting baskets that, and my dad's like, that's who he is. Like, that's what he wants to do. He wants to be the best athlete possible. So you got, I think sometimes you can't even teach that. It's kind of ingrained in somebody, either you have it or you don't. I think hard work, you can learn how to work hard as you get older for sure. But a lot of that to me is also ingrained, and it's just, especially at that age.
Yeah. Yeah. There's certain parts of your personality that you're not going to change and you're not going to develop. Some of it is genetic, but then the other factors are your family and your education. And I had really solid both. So I'm glad I didn't stray from either of those influences. I mean, really, I listened. I listened to the people I listened to my parents. I listened to my teachers and coaches. So if I've done anything, I would say that I've listened to the people who were really good influences.
It's such a big part of life. It really is. And take us back real quick to the 2001 championship game. Nate Zepp's quarterback, and you're on the team with Anthony Gonzalez, and you guys are loaded. What was it like to win that state championship with some of your best friends in the world? And I know you won one in '99, but this is with as Nate as quarterback, and everybody. It was just different because they had a.
Well,
what was that like?
We had lost to them in week 9, so we had a really tough regular season. We beat Massillon in week 4. Justin Zwick was on the team. They were a good team. We went down to Elder in Cincinnati. We lost the next week. So we were sitting there 4-1. And then I think we went 5-1. And then we lost 3 in a row. We lost to McKinley in overtime, St. Ed in overtime, and then Xavier by 1 point. So we were sitting there at 5-4. And then we won our last game, so we made the playoffs. We were the 7 seed. We went out and played Strongsville. They had a great running back, Brandon Murphy. I don't know if you remember.
I remember Brandon Murphy. Oh, yeah.
I'm sure you do. We played at their grass field. It was muddy. I mean, it was unbelievable. I think Nathan had like 380, maybe 390 passing yards.
Wow.
Gonzo had an 80-yarder. And so then we just got on a roll. We played Solon, we played Harding, we played Massillon. So then there we were with Xavier, who beat us by a point in week 9. And we just got after them. I mean, they were kind of shell-shocked. I think we were up 23-0 at half. We went in at halftime, like, guys, they're not going to come back on us like they did last time. We were just in complete control of the game. But then when you win that, it's just a culmination of really years of work. It's a really incredible feeling. And then to celebrate it with your friends and your coaches and your family, it's amazing. It really is. But here's the thing. You have to move on. You have to get after what's your next challenge. What are you going to do next? Now, for me, that was, I had the discus and then in the shot put. So I had that that for me. But just because you win a championship, I mean, it's great, but in the scheme of life, what does it mean? Like at times, not all that much.
That's true. Yeah.
Like that's maybe one of the things that the pandemic taught me. Like sports are really important, but at other times they're not important at all.
True. It's very
And
true.
it's weird to say that, it's weird to have that come out of my mouth. Um, but it is true. I mean, so anyways, we had a really great team. Xavier was an undefeated team back when we played them in 2001. It was back at Fawcett, not at Tom Benson, but at Fawcett Stadium. Um,
And you guys didn't McKinley have Maurice Claret?
Harding.
I'm sorry, Harding did. Okay, I knew one of those teams.
Round
Yeah.
3 of the playoffs.
People forget how great he was.
He ran for 175.
Jeez.
I don't know why. The week before, he had 400 yards against Eds.
That's just insane.
But Tom McDaniels was the coach at Harding, former McKinley coach. That was probably the association you made.
Yeah,
Ignatius played McKinley a lot in the 90s in the playoffs.
That's what I'm thinking of.
Yeah, so it was Gonzo had a great game. We were teammates in track and football, so we got to know each other really well, and then Ohio State teammates. So yeah, it was great. It really was very satisfying.
I was gonna say it had to be satisfying. And now after college, after high school, when you obviously end up going to Ohio State, but give us how that occurred, and was Ohio State always your first choice, and how did that come about?
No. I went to the College of the Holy Cross first.
Oh, did you? Okay.
Yeah. So they I missed a lot of my junior year football. I had a tore a ligament in my thumb in the first game. So then I had surgery, and I missed 6-7 weeks there. So I wasn't on the radar. Even though I played a lot my sophomore year, I played fullback. That was kind of when fullbacks were being phased out. So my recruiting really in football was a little slow. I didn't really know this at the time, but because I was a state runner-up in the discus my sophomore year, well, track teams don't have as much money to give.
Yep.
So anyways, Holy Cross, they called me in football and track. And I was just kind of interested in doing both. It was hard to picture my life without both sports, which is kind of weird to think about, but that's just the way that I thought. So they were Patriot League football and Patriot League Division I track. And I talked to both their coaches. I took a visit, and they're a Jesuit school like Ignatius. It was a small school, 2,700 kids. It's in Worcester, Mass. My freshman year, we were 4-8. Weren't really that good. Football was just not. I just didn't think I wanted to be playing there anymore. And I was thinking of maybe just doing the discus. So I was fortunate enough to be all Patriot League in the shot put my freshman year. But I had already made the decision to walk on at Ohio State and make the transfer. Now that was tough. That was a really tough thing because most guys are in the recruiting class, they have those 25 guys that they're in the class with. They come in together, they form those bonds. I really didn't have that. It was just me and a couple other guys. So it was tough socially, really getting in and getting to know guys and getting them to accept you. You're just this walk on. Not that there were like bad guys on the team. I thought there were really good guys and really solid coaches too. But that's just the way it is. You're just kind of the new guy. You're a walk on. You're not a scholarship. So that was kind of tough. Yeah,
it had to be. I didn't think about it from that aspect of being a walk on, how it is different in some ways, and that never occurred to me. So,
yeah.
What would your advice be to anybody who's trying to walk on to a major college like that? What would your advice to them be?
I talk to a lot of guys every year about it. You have to really want to do it. And I say, one of the first questions I ask is, do you for sure want to play college ball? And if there's hesitation, I stop them. I say, look, if you're not sure you want to play, then you don't really want to play. Okay. If you tell me, yes, coach, I want to play, I'm dying to play college ball, I say, okay, well, then be prepared for this and this and this. And really, it's be prepared to work harder than you ever have before, um, in the weight room, on the practice field, um, and then always believe in yourself. There's going to be so many moments where you want to quit. There's going to be 5 to 10 of those, like no doubt about it. Even if you're a scholarship player, I think when you reach college athletics, there's just moments where, for whatever reason, with if you're homesick or things aren't going so well, the competition's higher. There's going to be times where you just feel like I don't want to do this anymore. I think that's just natural. And then when you learn to push through that and learn to talk to yourself and say, okay, I may be going through a rough patch. I'm going to just plow right through. Um, that's when you really start to make good progress and start to really feel good about what you're doing. But that's the advice. You have to make sure you want to play college sports, because if you don't, you'll find out that you don't. Just the commitment that it takes, the time commitment, the physical and mental effort, just to even practice every day. I mean, even at Ohio State, some of those guys, were just some of the best players. I mean, when I think of like an AJ Hawk or Will Smith or just some of these unbelievable
Chris
players.
Gamble, all those guys. Yep.
Gamble. I mean, when I was older, Malcolm Jenkins was coming in.
Yep.
Just some unbelievable athletes. Just to even compete with them every day, it was like the best games you ever were in.
I can't imagine. I mean, Ted Ginn on that team. Yeah. Gonzo, obviously.
Oh, yeah.
You guys are
Troy
loaded.
Smith, just
Troy
so
Smith.
many,
Yeah.
so many great athletes.
And a lot of great Northeast Ohio athletes on that team.
Yeah,
A ton of them.
yeah, very much so. Tressel really hit that. He really hit Ohio hard, and then he knew Northeast Ohio, and we had a number of good players on those teams. But yeah, it's a mental and a physical grind that you just have to be ready for. You have to know to expect it. Sometimes it's more mental, sometimes it's more physical. That's kind of.
I love that advice too about, do you want to actually play or not? If they hesitate, right there, that's your answer. I mean, you have to be that dedicated. If you're not, you have no chance.
Maybe if you want to play, maybe you want to look at a lower level. But if you're going to walk on, I mean, if you're a walk on, you don't have things in your favor. You have nothing in your favor.
It's true. I mean, I don't know if you got to watch The Last Dance about Jordan and the Bulls, but
I think I saw all of it. Yeah.
MJ kind of talks about on there. He's like, I was really tough on those guys, probably to a fault. He was really tough on them, but he goes, you can't get through my stuff. How are you going to get through the NBA finals and the playoffs against, Oakley and Ewing and the Knicks and all Reggie Miller, all these guys? He goes, so you better be able to take my stuff in practice, because I'm going to give it to you. That way, when you're in a big moment, it's not going to be too big for you. And I mean, there's a lot of debate on how far he went, but the point is he won 6 championships and he was the ultimate competitor,
He did things that other people weren't willing to do, and that's why he won. Now, obviously, super talented, but there was something more going on at the Bulls that wasn't going on elsewhere. And I think Jordan has that position of maybe the greatest competitor, that we know of.
I think he is. Yeah.
Yeah.
And growing up watching him as we were kids back then, you didn't even realize how, you knew he was iconic, but you didn't realize that you got older. Like, wow, that guy was, 6 championships in 8 years. Like, we'll never, even now when all these super teams can't even do that. So, imagine back then, it wasn't like the Bulls were, Pippen was fantastic and Rodman, but that's not a super team necessarily. It was Jordan and Pippen, and then really a lot of role players. And
something to be said, as we were growing up, my dad would say, yeah, Jordan's the best player ever.
Oh, my dad would.
For him to know that at that time, to me, was a big sign. I was like, wow. Usually you need some perspective. You need some distance from that guy's career to know. Well, no, they were already saying it. We were 10.
He retired the first time they were saying it. He had 3 championships then, but not even the 6. And they were already, hey, this guy's the best we've ever seen. And then I remember, I think Coach K and a couple other guys back then talking about it, saying how, he's just he's a different level. I mean, we've seen Kareem and Magic and Bird and all these great players, but this guy is at a different level. His competitiveness. He was just the ultimate. And you watch what he went through back in the. You were talking about going through the grind. What he went through with the Pistons, the bad boy Pistons, and the Bird McHale Celtic. They would beat him up, literally physically beat. And that was when basketball was almost like football, where they would just throw you down and elbow you and bloody noses. And Jordan just kept picking himself back up. I mean, he really did. He was the ultimate competitor. I've never seen anybody go through what he went through to win just one championship, not to mention 6.
Yeah, I have a great respect for him, especially watching those series with the Pistons, and it's just amazing.
I mean, their whole job. I mean, they Rodman and Bill Laimbeer, they were literally just out there just to hurt Jordan, basically, just elbow him, put him.
Right, the top dog.
No question about it.
Yeah,
no question about it. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. And even back then, the Cavs had a great team. They couldn't even get out of the first round. They had Price and Doherty and Elo and Nance, and so it's like that was just Jordan. I have a ton of respect for him, and I've had several players on the podcast who played with him, including Dennis Hobson, actually, who went to Ohio State. And Dennis told me, Brad, he's like, we would be driving to practice, and MJ would fly by me. He would see me on the highway, fly by me, hurry up, get out of his car, and run to the gym and say, "I got here first." That's how he was. He wanted to beat you at everything. He really was that kind of guy. I mean, it's almost like he started laughing. He's like, it's almost like a sickness, but that's why he won 6 championships. He just,
right. And if he's willing to make those sacrifices and bring the other guys along, he earned those world championships.
No doubt about it. And speaking of championships, so, you with Ohio State, you guys I think it was your senior year when you guys get to the championship against Florida.
Yeah. So I got there in 2003.
Right after they won the first one.
Year after, we went down to the Fiesta Bowl. We beat Kansas State. Next year, we beat Oklahoma State in the Alamo.
And then Notre Dame, right?
Notre Dame, and then we lost to Florida. So those are my 4 seasons there.
Well, out of all those games, obviously, I'm sure the Florida game wasn't one of your favorite, but what were some of your favorite games in that era that you played there?
So here's what I tell people every year, or not, it comes up every year. When Ohio State plays Penn State, and it's at Penn State, in 2005, in 2005, we went to Penn State. We played a night game. It was so loud. We lost. Ohio State lost. It was so loud, and I'm like, this is the loudest I've ever heard a stadium. I just stood there on the sideline, and I yelled as loud as I could. I couldn't even hear myself.
Wow.
Okay? I told a couple science teachers here that story, and they don't forget it. They like things like sound and waves and all this stuff that I don't really know much about. So then when I see that teacher every year when we're playing Penn State, he's like, "I'll never forget you brought that story up."
That's crazy.
The circumstances around that Michigan game in 2006 when Bo died, I just couldn't believe it. It was like this. That's already a game where you have like to steal a term from Notre Dame, the echoes. You have the echoes, and then that just added to it. That was always a neat week. Tressel would invite the band in, and we would do Script Ohio on the indoor field the Sunday before the Michigan game. And Coach Earl Bruce would come in and talk to the team and give a real spirited talk. Trying to think of some of the other games. That 2005 game at Michigan was amazing. Gonzo had an awesome catch. I remember during that game, since we grew up in the 90s, we still weren't quite over that Michigan hump, So we were the favorite. We had an amazing team in 2005. I thought probably even better than 2006. We were down. And you just look up in the Michigan Stadium, it's like, are we still doing this thing with Michigan where we're the favorite and they beat us? Because at that point, I know Tressel, they won. Tressel was 3-1 at that point. He won in 2001, 2002, and 2004. And then they lost in 2003.
I remember that. Yep, that was
at Michigan. I remember that. I remember getting off the bus at the stadium, and one of my buddy's dads, I don't know if you ever knew John Conroy.
I know the Conroy name for sure.
Mr. Conroy played at Ohio State in the 60s.
Oh, did he? Okay.
He had blood, like he was bleeding. He was bleeding, like right here. I guess he had a beer bottle or beer can thrown at him.
Oh,
I didn't
really?
know why. I just get off the bus and I see this guy like standing with my dad. He's got blood coming out of his. Like, man, this is more intense than I thought. Um, the year before that, Michigan was the favorite. 04, we were like an 8-4, 9-4 team. You know, we had some rough weeks there. Brandon Joe had a great game. He was mostly a fullback. He played tailback. Teddy Ginn had a punt return that game in 04. Going to Iowa in 06 was amazing. I love that stadium. I remember going there in 04. We got our butts kicked. You'd have to look up the score. I think it was 31-13. You know, it was just not a score that Ohio State is used to, but they had some amazing defensive players.
Yeah, my buddy Trey Strauss played there. He was on the podcast a couple episodes ago, and he talks about how great it was playing there. Actually,
It's a great stadium. The field we're like this far from the stands are this far from the field.
And I think they also have a children's hospital actually right across the way, and they wave to the children every game. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
We didn't know about that then, or if that was going on. The pink locker room was actually, they redid it. Okay, when we were there in 04, it was a piece of trash. In 06, they renovated it, and there was a ton of space. You know, some of those Big Ten locker rooms don't have a ton of space, but this one did. Playing Notre Dame in 05, that was cool. My dad's cousin was the chaplain there, Bill Siege.
Really?
Yeah. Even hearing the Notre Dame fight song live at the game.
That had to be awesome.
It's amazing, you know.
I remember I gave my cousins a lot of crap after we beat them that game.
Yeah, we were better. I mean, we had so many good players.
Oh yeah.
Charlie Weiss was just getting up.
What wasn't I think it was a blowout from what I remember, or somewhat of a blowout.
I think it was fairly competitive, but we distanced ourselves later in the game. We had such a good defense. I remember. Obviously Hawk, just a great player. Yeah, those were, but you remember your teammates and the coaches more than those moments, really. Yeah.
You know, I love hearing all these stories because it's so cool to hear from the perspective of the player who played out, like the Penn State story. That's a story that nobody else except for the handful of players that played in that game or have ever played there, you know, over the years can really understand what that's all about. I mean, that's really interesting.
Yeah. The other game that was really playing Texas, you know, Vince Young came in.
Oh yeah, I remember that game. 25-22.
We really should have won that game. We had some chances.
That was early in the season, wasn't it?
That was probably a week 2.
Yep.
I don't remember who week 1 was, but that was so loud at Ohio Stadium.
I remember it was like a Saturday night game, and Vince Young was just that year he was unbelievable. That USC game, he pretty much single-handedly won that game for them. It was
next
unreal.
year when we went down to Austin, it wasn't that loud of a place.
Really?
I think they've added some things now. It was not loud at all. I think just the way that it was constructed. Ohio State is a really tall, and Michigan wasn't that loud either. Now I haven't been there since they added the boxes.
Yep.
But no, Michigan is a very broad. Those seats, they don't go up. Ohio Stadium goes up pretty steeply. Michigan is very flat. But no, Texas was not loud, but it was a great trip. You know, it was it a 1-2? Were we 2 and they were 1? I don't remember.
I can't remember.
Was it Colt McCoy? Was that?
I think Colt McCoy. I think he was a freshman then. Yeah, I think he played. I think you're right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because he took right over for Vince, I'm pretty sure. So yeah, you're right.
Yeah. That was cool. That was great.
You played in a great era back then. Again, a ton of great. I mean, there's still great players now, but it seemed like there were so many memorable guys from back in that era that
Yeah, I really was blessed to have been a part of it. Yeah.
Both Ignatius and Ohio State, really. I mean, those are some great eras of football. And I have a few more questions for you I want to get to. Sure. And again, I appreciate your time doing this, Ryan. I could talk for hours about all this stuff, as you know. So 3 more questions. One of them is related to being a coach. So the last 15 years of coaching at Ignatius, What is the number one thing you've learned?
Um, the number one thing I've learned, well, related to coaching, I've always believed this. You have to build the relationships first. At Ohio State, we had a sign in the office from Jim Tressel's dad, Lee Tressel, Coach Lee Tressel. And it said, they don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And that was just, I thought, the way my dad coached. That's the way I coach. I want to try to get to know guys first. And that's really kind of what's going to separate you. There's guys who want to come in and coach, and they might know all of the football, they might know everything, but if they're not going to connect with the players, they're not going to have a chance of being a great coach, I don't think. So that's really the big thing. The next thing I would say is, for a coach, as a coach, you have to be yourself. Okay, I'm not in any way trying to be Chuck Kyle. We are different people. Now I'm going to try to have his success, with some of his values, because values are really timeless. You just have to apply them differently in your era. But yeah, be yourself, and then build your relationships.
I love that. It is all about anything in life. Really, it comes down to relationships. I mean, that's what. I don't care if it's business, if it's whatever you're doing in life, you have to build quality, authentic relationships if you want to make it in certain areas. And I think, like you said, that it's a huge part of it.
Right. And if I can motivate the guys I coach better than the other guy that I'm going against, I have an advantage. I might not be more talented. My players might not be more talented. I don't know. But I'm going to try like hell to really build those relationships, because then, especially at a place like Ignatius, where alumni are a big part of the community. And as a coach, you don't want just to have those 4 years. You want to maintain that relationship with those guys.
And Ryan, for the St. Ignatius fans that don't know you very well, what do you want them to know about Ryan Franziger?
Well, mostly that I love the school. I love what I do. And I think with a great love, you have great opportunities. I'll always love the players. That's the thing. I am a coach who's going to love his players. I watched my dad do it. I watched Chuck Kyle do it. I've seen his assistants do it: Nick Restifo, Dan Corrigan, Marty Einen. And if that's true, if I end up doing that, then I think I'll be successful. And I'm not really talking about a record of any kind. Just, that's what I think the high school coach should do. And at a Catholic school, maybe even more so, just because we talk about these things, and we talk about faith. But yeah, that would probably be the best thing, and I hope I live up to it.
That's a great answer. And Ryan, last question I have for you, and I ask every guest this question, and I love hearing the answer, kind of related to what I just asked you, but when you look back 30 years from now, 35 years from now, you're retired, you're going to Ignatius games as an old man, and you're rooting on the new coach. What do you want people to know about the legacy of Ryan Franziger?
Well, what I would hope, Brad, is that there are a lot of guys who I coached who are at that game, who are coming up to me and talking to me, whether it's about football or life or their family or my family, or whatever it may be. That's what I would hope for. As far as legacy, that I think hopefully it would be like a living legacy, that, and maybe it's not even just players, maybe it's just people who were a fan of the program. And because you know what it's like as a fan, you can really get attached to your team, and you can kind of live and die with your team. I'm not saying you should, but you might.
Mm-hmm.
And if you give people, when your team does well, you feel better.
You do.
Not that we're trying to, take down the other fans or the other teams. I wish our opponents well, and when you're in youth sports, high school sports, I wasn't always like this, but I like seeing anybody succeed.
Mhm.
You know, no matter who the state champ is, congratulations to them. You know, they had a great season. Whoever it is, even I love watching the Division 7 state championship. I love watching all those smaller division games. It's way different than Division 1, you know. But anyways, that legacy, I think it would be hopefully a living legacy where guys have that relationship with me, um, you know, 30 years down the road.
I love that, man. Again, that's what I think it keeps coming back to the same thing, community, relationships. And again, that's what life, as I get older, especially, I realize that's what life's all about. And especially seeing my parents get older and people around me who I love to death, my brother, my sister, and to see that they're not going to be here forever. And it's like, you got to really appreciate the people around you, young and old. But
Sure.
especially as you get older, I think to our age, when we're in our late 30s now, going into our 40s, it's like you really see what life's all about. Because back when you're younger, you don't really get it. You
You
think you
don't know
know
what
at 18, you have no idea, but you think you do.
yeah,
Just, but yeah,
that's
it's
the trouble.
exactly. I mean, it's like it's so funny. I look back now and I thought I knew everything at 18. Oh yeah, I got it all figured out. I didn't know anything. But now it's even now you don't know anything, but at least you know more than you did back then.
Yeah, yeah.
So, but Ryan, it's been awesome having you on the program, and it's so cool to catch up with you. And again, for those listening, me and Ryan have known each other for 31 years, something like that. So it's been forever. And to hear you're the new coach of Ignatius really makes me proud as just someone who's
Thanks.
known you and grew up with you. And it's going to be fun watching you, as a coach here in the coming years. And I'm definitely going to try to make it to some games, and, I'll be there with some of my buddies who you probably played with. So, it'll be a lot of
You're
fun.
always you're always welcome, Brad. So
Well, I appreciate that.
it's great to see you and great to catch up.
Likewise, Ryan. So we'll have to do it again sometime soon. So appreciate it.
All right.
All right, man. Take care.